Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and finally getting a chance to start using some of the new MFT stamps and Die-namics. I've had all this stuff sitting here and just not enough hours in the day. So I pulled out the Sketchy Flowers stamp set. I love this set, and I decided I wanted to create masks for all the outline images. So I pulled out a large piece of Post-it tape and just pressed it down onto my work surface, and then I'm stamping all of these outline images onto the Post-it tape with MFT's Black Licorice Hybrid ink. It doesn't really matter what ink you use to stamp. FYI, with Post-it tape, ink tends to smear, which I know this and I always forget it. So it either takes longer to dry or you just need to be a little more careful with it. And me being the person who flies by the seat of their pants, wasn't paying enough attention, and I end up getting ink all over my fingers and then on my finished card, but I'm going to deal with that later. So I stamped all the images, and then I'm just going to use my detail scissors to cut all these masks out. Most of these masks are really, really simple to cut out. The only ones are these two kind of, I guess I'll call them ruffle flowers. Those took the longest, but I just kind of do mindless tasks. I actually was live streaming while I was cutting these just to get them done. And when I cut out my mask, I cut like right on the line if it's a thicker line image, or right inside the line if it's a really thin line image. You don't want to cut outside the lines when you're creating masks. Otherwise, you're going to end up with like a little bit of shadowing around the edges, or, you know, it's going to give like white space. So I just cut everything out, and like I do with all of my fussy cutting, I usually keep my scissors like just pointed away from me, and I move the paper or the masking tape or whatever it is I'm cutting out. So I cut out all of these, and I've said in previous videos, I save all my masks. I reuse them, and I'll show that here. And I just stick them to the backing sheet of my stamp set. So I cut all these masks out, stuck them to the backing sheet, so then the next time I go to use this set, I have all these masks ready. So once I'm done with cutting out all my masks, I took a piece of smooth white cardstock from MFT and I die cut it with the large die from the Blueprints 1 Die-namics. That rectangle die from that set, and then the Blueprints 2 Die-namics, the original two sets. Those rectangles I literally do not put away. I keep them stored right beside my Big Shot machine because I use them all the time. So I die cut the smooth white cardstock, and then I'm going to start stamping my images. So I started with the outline, and then this set includes all these fun blob, solid, whatever you want to call them, images. And they're all outlined so you know what goes with what. So I'm stamping them with different colors of MFT's dye inks here. I'm slowly collecting all of their cube inks. I really like ink cubes because I can have more colors in less space, even though I do have a lot of the original MFT ink pads, but I've had them for years, but I really like having these cubes. So I pulled out several cubes just to create a fun little color scheme. And then I've super sped this up because it did take a while, but I'm just stamping the images, stamping the colors with the solid images, and then masking these off and just going along. I didn't really have a whole plan. I just wanted to do a cluster of these flowers and leaves on the lower right of this piece of cardstock. And when you're masking, everything looks like a hot mess because you've got the outlines of the images, and then you're covering it with white, and then you're stamping over top, and just everything looks horrible, really. But that's the beauty of masking. So I just kept going along and stamping everything until I was pleased with how, you know, the amount of images I had. And I wanted to be fairly heavy with how many images I was stamping in this corner because I do plan on doing some die cutting, and I wanted the images to look like very clustered together. I didn't want a whole lot of white space within these flowers. So I've got everything stamped, masked off as much as I wanted, and then I finished off by stamping these purple little flowers. You can't really tell on camera, but that one wispy flower on the far left, I smeared it, the black outline, when I stamped it, but by this point, you know, I'd put all this like time and effort into this, so I was like, you know what, I'll fix this later. I will deal with that. I had also got a few smears from black ink that I'd picked up with my fingers when placing the masks, etc. But again, you can't really see it on camera, but in real life, they were noticeable to me anyway, but I'm going to deal with that. So I was done on my stamping, so now I'm going to peel off all these masks, and that's what reveals this image, and placing the masks back on the backing paper because I can reuse them. I have had people ask, like, how many times can you use masks? Like, what do you do if they lose their stick? I honestly don't know. It just depends on how often you use them. But when it gets to the point where I've reused them so much that they no longer stick or they're just completely saturated through with ink, I just throw them out. and then I'll stamp and recut new ones because it honestly doesn't take that much time. I'm not going to waste extra time trying to fiddle and like make them work if they're just used right up. So I've removed all my masks, set them aside, and then to fix my little bit of mistakes with the smears and whatnot, I smushed, this is Summer Splash ink, that's what I used for the Sketchy Flowers solid areas. So I smushed that onto an acrylic block and then added a little bit of water here. And then I'm just going to use a paintbrush and flick that against the edge of the block to create a really light blue splatter, which isn't very obvious on camera, but on the card front you can see it really well. And then because that's not enough, I also used some black soot distress ink. This is my favorite for when I want black splatter because when you add water to this, it still stays black. Whereas sometimes certain brands of dye inks, yeah, they'll turn different colors. They'll usually turn like a purple if you add water to them. Or else they're not water soluble, like most, like, you know, MFT's black licorice hybrid ink. It doesn't work well with water. So that's why I used the black soot ink, splattered that, and that helped kind of mask any little areas where I'd smeared anything. It just made it look intentional. So once I did that, I pulled out the You Trio Die-namics, and I used this large one with the capitalized Y, and I'm lining it up along this piece of cardstock, and I used my T-square roller to make sure I got this perfectly straight, because I'm obviously wanting to keep this entire piece, so I wanted to make sure this die cut perfectly. So I used that, and then I held it into place with some micropore tape, and then ran that through my die cut machine. And then I have some wild Wisteria cardstock that I'd cut down and scored. It was 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and I scored it at 4.25, so it'll be a top folding A2 sized card. And then I'm going to adhere this straight to my card base with my Nuvo adhesive, making sure to apply adhesive right around the letters of the word You here so that everything sticks down flat. And then after I die cut this original piece, I die cut several scraps from the wild Wisteria cardstock with that same die. So I'm inlaying the word itself with one of the purple scraps, and then I'm using the little pattern pieces there from the original die cut to get those into place. And then to finish this off, I'm going to stack 3 more of these purple cardstock die cut U's. And then once I have all 3 of those together, I'm going to adhere the original patterned U on top of that. You could do this all with white cardstock if you wanted, but I just thought it would give it that little extra something to do it all in purple. So I've got everything adhered together with the same Nuvo adhesive, and then I'm going to adhere that directly on top of the original die cut there. So this is popped up, it's got that dimension, and then it's got that little bit of purple cardstock kind of peeking through. So I love the look of this when other people do it, and it's just a fun thing. I don't do it very often, but I just love the look of it once it's done. And large die cuts work really well for this, you know, anything really hefty in the weight and whatnot. So die cut that, and then I grabbed the scrap of black cardstock, the ever, you know, present black cardstock that's always sitting on my desk. There's always pieces of black cardstock. I never bother putting them away because I use them all the time for things like this. So I used my anti-static powder tool, and I stamped a companion sentiment from the All About You stamp set that coordinates with that die. So I stamped that with VersaMark ink, and then used my Hero Arts white embossing powder. Melted that with my heat tool, gonna funnel that embossing powder back into the container, put the lid on so I don't knock it over. And then I'm gonna remove the excess anti-static powder with my fingers, and then line this up in my paper trimmer, and then trim that down. And as I was looking at, I originally was going to pop this up with foam tape, but then as I was looking at it, I'm like, I just happened to stamp it far enough along that it would line up with the right edge there. And then I'm just using my PenBlade here to lightly basically do a really light cut along the edge of the Y, and then removed it from the card front and then pressed it deeper with the PenBlade to actually cut it there on that angle so I could nestle it right against the bottom of the Y. So that just, again, it just kind of happened to work out perfectly. That wasn't the original intent, but I love when things work out that way. And I love when I look smarter than I really am. So I did that, set it aside. I die cut a second piece of white cardstock with the same large die from the Blueprints 1 set. And then I'm just going to stamp a smaller cluster this time. This went along faster. Obviously, I've sped this up in the video editing process. This went faster since I'd already done the front, so I kind of knew what I was doing this time around. But I just did a smaller cluster this time with just one of each of these flowers just to have, you know, the continuity on the inside of my card. So it's stamped, masked off the one flower, stamped everything. And then I'm going to use my T-square ruler again and the smaller or the lowercase U die from the same U Trio set. Line that up again and then tape it into place with micropore tape. And I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. I did think about just stamping the large word U on the inside of the card with purple ink, but as I was thinking that, I'm like, ooh, it would look perfect if I just die cut it with the U Trio dies and then stamp the companion sentiment above it. So that's what I did. I ran it through my machine, left everything into place, and I'm going to stamp the second sentiment with the same black licorice hybrid ink right above that. And then I'm going to adhere this to the inside of my card. So got that stamped, and then I'm going to flip this over, use the same Tonic or Nuvo, Tonic Nuvo adhesive, trying not to be too heavy-handed with it because one, you don't want to warp your cardstock, and two, you don't want, you know, adhesive oozing out all over the place and ruining the card. And same thing, trying to make sure to add adhesive around those little bits around the die cut words so that those aren't popped up, because you can see right in the middle of the Y there, it just wanted to curl up a little bit. So press that down, and then I'm going to use that die cut to center the little area for the bottom of the Y, which was still kind of stuck in the die cut, which was perfect. So I just applied a little dab of adhesive to that, and then used that to center that where it was supposed to go. And then did the same thing with the center of the O. Just lined up that die cut word, applied a little bit of adhesive so it's not oozing out, and then adhered the center, and that finished off the inside of the card. So then to completely finish off this card, I pulled out some of my Nuvo crystal drops. So I've got Ebony Black and then crushed Grape, and just liberally added my little dimensional elements with this. So I started with the black, and hard to tell because I like to keep the bottle straight up and down when I'm applying these, because that gets you the most perfect circle. But I have my hand raised so that I'm not, you know, leaning my hand into this and then smearing it everywhere. I do try to be careful, at least at this stage, because if you wreck this, it's a pain in the butt to try and fix. So I did the Ebony Black and the crushed Grape, and then I used the Jewel drops in Rose Water, which is transparent, just to finish off and bring out a little bit more of that pink that I had stamped earlier. And that finished off my card. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post with links to all the supplies used. So check out the description box below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.